Hello, second grade families. I'm Shannon Finley. I'm the K through 5 ELA curriculum coordinator for the Walpole Public Schools, and I'm partnering with the second grade teachers to offer a few tips and strategies in terms of helping your second grader at home with reading and writing. First of all, I just want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing at home. I have a second grader myself and am finding these times extremely challenging, and I am an educator. So I appreciate everything you are doing in order to keep the learning going at home with your children. So I'm going to share my screen and just kind of walk you through a few things that I hope you find helpful. And so a couple of things I just want to touch base on are supporting your second grader with spelling at home. I'm going to share a few strategies that we use in school so that you don't become the walking dictionary or the walking speller like we try not to be at school. We're going to talk a little bit about trick and sight words, so those words that students really can't sound out, that they just really have to know and remember. And then most importantly, how we can connect spelling to our actual reading and writing. So first, I just want to kind of show you a couple of strategies that we work on with kids in terms of spelling. So one of the things that we encourage second graders to do with spelling is to think about syllables if they're trying to spell a word. So the easiest way for me to explain that is if I think about a compound word like baseball, right? And I want the student to think, okay, how many syllables in baseball? Two. Baseball. And I want them to spell by syllable. So they might spell base and then ball. Right? So syllables is one strategy. If your child asked you, like, how do you spell? You could encourage them to think, like, how many syllables? Spell each syllable. Another thing that we really teach them to think about is stretching out the sounds. Like if I have in the younger grades, we teach them with a rubber band. So if I say the word slowly and I really stretch out the sounds of each letter in order to then write them down. So a good example might be monster, right? So I might say like stretch out the sounds of monster, monster, monster. And again, monster. Try to get my child to really think about stretching out the sound. So instead of just telling them how to spell the word, I might encourage them to think about, so I might say, think about the syllables, like how many syllables are in that word? Try to spell each syllable. Or I might say, really stretch out the sounds of that word and see if you can get as many sounds down as you can. Another thing that's really tricky in second grade that we teach students is that there's so many different ways to spell a certain sound. So for example, the sound of E in a word could be spelled E-E, it could be spelled E-A, or it could be spelled E-Y. And there's a few rules that we teach them, like E-Y most likely usually comes at the end of a word. You're not going to find it most commonly, I should say, at the end of a word, but a lot of times we call it a spelling option. So we'll say you just have to kind of give it a go, look at the word and see if it looks right. So if my child was trying to spell the word beach, I might say, well, write it down. Like, what do you think? And they could write it beach. And I might say, well, how else could you write beach? And they might say, and then I would say, well, look at the words. Which one looks right to think about the word beach as in I went to the beach, like the place. And then they might say this, right? They may not notice right away, and I might just show them, well, this one is like the beach that you would go to, right? Another good example is so many times I-R, E-R, and U-R all say that sound. So they really have to just kind of picture it in their mind, try a couple, and see what works. So if they were trying to spell the word turn, I might say, well, what are your spelling options? And they might say I-R, E-R, U-R, or not, right? I might prompt them to do that. And then I would have them write it down and try each one. And then see which one. And then hopefully they would say, oh yeah, this one looks like I took a turn. This is the one that I want to use. So that's another big one that we teach them in school. Again, it's a way just to encourage independence, foster independence. You don't have time to spell every word for them, nor do we in school, right? So we're trying to get them to become independent spellers, and those are a few of the strategies. In terms of trick words, so trick words are just words that they can't sound out, or um, they can't the sounds are so different that they can't just think about the sound. So that's why we call them trick words, or we call them sight words. So here are a few that they may come across, just so you can kind of see what a trick word would be. For example, many sounds like there should be an E in many, right? Because we spell men, M-E-N, but the English language is hard and they put an A there. So this is a word that the student just has to know and memorize. So your teacher most likely sent home some flashcards is a good way just to practice them, reading through them, remembering them. We teach them skywriting. Your student would know skywriting, which is where they write the words in the air. If they were willing to do that with you at home, that's another strategy. Painting, chalk, anything fun to just kind of get the movement in, oftentimes helps with the memory. Again, those are just a couple of strategies that they might give a go in terms of trick word. And so connecting this to reading and writing, second grade, such an amazing year. Students really go from just reading the words to really reading to learn, right? So they're no longer just reading the words. They're no longer learning to read. They're actually reading to learn. Is how that's usually best said. And so some of the things you can think about where they no longer really need a lot of support with the words that they're reading is to sort of think about what they're reading, and ask some questions in terms of not being testy, but being like a genuine place of curiosity. So for example, if my second grader was reading a book about penguins, instead of saying like, tell me everything you know about penguins, which we probably wouldn't have said, oh, wow, you were reading a book about penguins? Like, tell me what's like the most interesting thing you learned about penguins, right? So I don't want them to feel like they're being tested. I want them to feel like I'm genuinely interested in what they're reading. Same thing if they're reading a fiction book or a storybook, right? I have a worm, instead of, who are the characters, what happened in the story, I might just say, oh, I have a worm, and tell me about that. That book sounds so amazing, right? Like, what was your favorite part? Show me your favorite part in the book, right? And just keeping it light, keeping it fun. Our main goal, with second graders and all students, is to really foster a love of reading and writing. So just to continue to do that, whether we're at school or we're at home. So thank you so much. Please reach out to me or your classroom teacher for any more additional support. Again, thank you for everything you're doing at home. And I look forward to meeting you someday. Thanks so much.